Promoted on the website Blackstonian, the first mayoral forum for candidates of color promises to focus on the concerns of Boston's minority neighborhoods. The event is free and open to all, but something's missing. There are 12 candidates in the race, but only 6 are invited, only the candidates of color. Writing about the exclusion of the 6 white candidates, Boston Globe columnist Joan Vanacchi calls it short-sighted. Fellow Globe columnist and former city councilor Tom Keene says it's wrong-headed. At least one candidate, Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, says she won't attend. The original venue, Dorchester's Freedom House, has also backed out. Organizers say they are undaunted and will hold the forum outside if needed. Joining me now are Mayoral Crawford, a community activist and the editor of the blog Blackstonian, and Boston Globe columnist Tom Keene. So I know you're not an organizer. You've made that clear.
Correct.
But you're a supporter of this. And
yes.
We spoke today with Maggie Brown, who is the organizer. And she said, gosh, she's hurt. She says, this is just a great idea that's been tarnished. And by the way, all the white candidates are invited. They're just not invited to be on the podium. They're invited to come and mingle and be in the neighborhood. But doesn't it strike you as odd at all that they're not invited on the podium?
Not at all. I think that any person, any group has the right to invite whoever they want to the debates. There have been previous debates with organized by other groups who have excluded candidates of color who they didn't deem worthy or hit whatever financial thresholds or what have you. So I don't find it odd at all. A women's group might, if there were more female candidates, they might have an all-woman forum, or if there were more Latino candidates, it might be an all-Latino forum. So I don't really find the big, and I'm a little bit puzzled by the pushback that they've gotten. And I support those sisters, as I do any organic grassroots efforts from that come out of my community to try to organize and get people talking about the issues and encouraging them to vote.
But since so many white people are going to be voting too, why not integrate them into this? Hey, listen, that community is really, really important. Why not get everybody's input into it?
Well, I mean, the thing is that in my community, obviously dealing with the history of racism in Boston and the fact that my community, Black and Latino people, Cape Verdean people as well, are suffering disproportionately by everything you can imagine: health disparities, incarceration, so on and so forth. Of course, the violence. So once again, I don't see any problem with having a meeting to talk about with these candidates of color. What are their specific agenda items and positions that they hold in terms of galvanizing the quote-unquote community of color's vote?
What's wrong with that?
So I couldn't disagree with it more. I mean, first of all, I think that if a bunch of people were running for mayor and a women's group only invited the female candidates, that would be equally wrong. That what you need to do is invite all of the candidates and have all of the candidates pitch to whatever community they're addressing and talk about how they're going to solve that community's problems. What I really think is wrong-headed here is that you actually end up pitting white candidates versus non-white candidates as if there's really some gulf between the two. And ultimately, in an election like this, particularly if a minority candidate is going to become mayor, that minority candidate has to be able to reach out to the white community. And the subtext, it seems to me, of this particular debate or forum is that somehow there's a gulf that is unbridgeable. And I think that that's the kind of thing we need to resist.
But you're saying that this particular forum is to address a particular issue in a particular community, sort of like dealing with the environment. This is dealing with violence and issues that are particular to that community.
Right. Exactly. You know, and the issues will be broad because obviously there's going to be education, healthcare, and all that stuff in it. But once again, I don't see what the big deal is. This woman, Maggie Brown, and her partner as well, who did this. 2 young women from the community who had this idea to do this effort. They called everybody in advance, got the Freedom House agreed. They signed a contract, paid a deposit. All the candidates had already agreed to attend, and then all of a sudden, because of one what I would classify as a poorly written article, not yours.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. You know, all this flack has gotten, and now the Freedom House backs out these young women from the community who just tried to do a good thing are under attack, and it's wrong.
Is the assumption, though, that only a minority candidate could deal with the problems in this community, or is it you just want to hear what they have to say?
No, not at all. And I can't speak to what their their motives were in doing it or what their thinking is, but this is what they decided to do, and I support that effort. There's been many forums. All of these candidates have been phone calling, the literature, forums, so we're definitely getting it. People clearly know who some of the people are who are running, so I don't think that's an issue at all. This is just one small group of 2 community members who wanted to do the right thing, came up with a forum to just do it, and it's their right to do it. There's nothing wrong with it. This is America.
All right, listen, Tom, when Deval Patrick was running for governor, and even since he's been, let's face it, he's faced a particular challenge from communities of color saying, what are you going to do to solve these problems? It's a unique problem. It's unique to a certain community.
And there's no question.
They're holding, minority candidates accountable for a unique problem. Is it really so wrong?
It is wrong because we have a whole bunch of candidates, a number of candidates, 12 candidates who are running. Half of them minority, half of them are white candidates. Ultimately, one of those people is going to have to be mayor of the entire city, which means that that person's going to have to be able to address, whether that person's white or non-white, that person's going to have to address the issues, the unique issues in some cases, that are in the communities of color. And to deny the communities of color sort of that ability to hear from all of the candidates is, I think, a huge mistake for those communities of color, but it also kind of sets up this us versus them dynamic, which we've spent a long time trying to get over that in Boston, and it seems to be bringing back the bad old days.
Mayoral, are you suggesting in some way, too, that the communities of color should necessarily vote for a candidate of color? Is that another way of, just excluding the white people from the debate by saying, hey, you should choose from one of these people?
No, many people have floated that suggestion around, and I reject it. I mean, but once again, my community is not monolithic. So there are people who are saying we all have to vote the same way and it should be candidate X. Then there are other people who are, for this candidate or that candidate. Myself, I'm about one man, one vote. So I get a vote and no one's going to know but me and God when I go into that booth and pull the lever for who I feel is though the best candidate, doing my own research. And I encourage other people to do the same. I think that is the part of this that I agree with, and we need to get out of some of this personality politics and whatnot. What we need to be looking at, my community, every community, is who is best suited to do this job, and after the reign of Menino, to move this city forward into a different place. And really, in that matter, I really haven't heard anything from any of the candidates that has exactly bowled me over, white, black, or green, yet.
Yeah. By the way, I really agree with Jamal on this one, which is that I don't think, although people perceive that people vote on the basis of ethnicity or skin color or whatever, I actually think that in this race, a lot of voters are going to look well beyond that and are going to start to evaluate the candidates on their merits, which is what they should do.
The black community and Latino community voted for Menino for all the time, consistently, and actually after bad performance. He said, judge me on education, schools are failing. We had several instances with policing and stuff where I've been here before on, and so what, but still, overwhelmingly, they still supported Menino. So I don't think that my community is so small-minded and wrong-headed to just vote
and I don't
based
think
on
the
color.
community is wrong-headed. I thought the organizers were wrong-headed.
Okay, thank you for that
You brought up
clarification.
an issue a second ago, which is that there's some, a certain faction they got together within the last couple of days, led by Kevin Peterson, who thinks we all ought to get behind one candidate. He happens to be supporting Charlotte Gollar-Ritchie, but he's saying we got to weed out the others so that a person of color has a better chance. How do you feel about that?
I disagree with that, only with one exception. Things that are just so ridiculous, like the candidacy of David James Wyatt with $17 in the campaign account, I think, okay, it's time to pack up that wagon and go home.
But no one's going to vote for him.
Exactly, which is more reason why he should pack up the wagon and go home. But the others there, I think they're credible. A lot of people have marginalized, for instance, let's use Charles Clemens as an example, and he has been locked out of many debates, so shame on the groups like Stand for Children, who just said, oh, he's beneath us, and he's not invited to debates.
Not beneath it, but he didn't meet a certain threshold, which is how even the presidential debates decide.
That threshold certainly wasn't based on groundwork, because in my community, Charles Clemens is outworking many of the candidates who are just kind of think that the mayor's seat is owed to them, or they just inherit it. But Charles Clemens is the little engine that could. And once again, I'm not supporting anybody, but I can say that he's been working his backside off, and I see his work.
This tactic of squeezing people, though, and pushing them out of the race never really works.
No good.
I saw it work once. I recall I said it worked once in 1970, and that was able to be done when the left-wing community, anti-war community, went behind Father Drinan, if you remember him, and forced Kerry at the time to pull out of a race for Congress. That's one of the few cases where I've seen it happen. Most other cases, the candidates who are not getting squeezed love the idea of the candidates who are getting squeezed really don't take to it very kindly.
Jane Swift got bullied out of the race.
Right. She got bullied out of a race.
Bullied out, yeah. So she doesn't count because she's a woman. All right. Just got to get that in there. All right. Tom Keene, Mayoral Crawford, thanks so much.
Thank you.
When is
Pleasure.
the debate anyway?
The debate will be the 10th.
The 10th.
And even though Freedom House is pulled
They
out.
can have it on the street.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right. And we want to invite you to tune in next week when WGBH hosts a series of hour-long forums with all of the candidates. Each night, we'll be joined by 3 hopefuls to discuss the most pressing issues facing the city. That's Monday through Thursday at 7 on WGBH2 and simulcast on 89.7 WGBH Radio. And join us tomorrow for a special Beat the Press. Going, gone. 2 major newspapers under new ownership. Big personalities get the boot. The Boston Phoenix becomes a media casualty, while ABC's Nightline survives to report another day. It's a special Beat the Press tomorrow at 7. I'm Emily Rooney. Thanks for watching.